hockey. We're just here to rap about hockey.
My name is Howie. You can call me Slick. I don't do much talking, but I carry a big stick. I'm not supposed to tell you.
Hey, Boston College, do you hear what you've done to us just now? You're making us reference this thing from the 1980s where teams felt like they had to do hip-hop tracks. And the hip-hop tracks were normally not that good. While the inner Boston University fan in me cringes, let's introduce and welcome you into the first round wrap-up of the Beanpot tournament and the Beanpot final preview on Puck University. I'm Chris Lynch, joined by my friend, my guest, a person who doesn't actually have any school affiliation with any of the Beanpot schools, but is just a general good guy and good hockey person, Josh Kummins of the New England Hockey Journal. Josh, I'm sorry I had to subject you to any bit of the Beanpot trot. I'm very sorry. I hope you can forgive me.
No worries, Chris. Thanks for having me again.
I mean, you were a hit last time. Our friend Marissa and Jemmy described this as much must-listen radio, so we'll take that compliment coming from her. So it's not a bad deal. You did well, and I guess I have to have you back on to continue talking about the Beanpot and continue to close this thing out. And we'll have you on next week to close out the trilogy. So, but a great first weekend of the a great first Monday of the Beanpot tournament.
Yeah,
lived up to the expectations. Lived up to the not a lot of goals scored. That's the thing that we could have seen it being high volume shots and high volume goals. For one of the games, really, we got high volume shots, but for both of them, we got really good goaltender play, and for both of them, we got really, really low scoring, kind of physical games, stuff that I don't think you often see from the Beanpot tournament, where it is primarily a goaltender physical game. You've seen it in the past, but I think it was a lot more so in this year's tournament than maybe in some past.
Yeah, I agree. I think we talked about it last week when we kind of breaking down the four teams, just how good the goaltenders on each of them were, and right around 920 were the four of them last week when we came in very close in all the national rankings and the Hockey East statistics for obviously the three hockey schools in the tournament. But yeah, I guess it doesn't really surprise me that that's what we got. I guess, like you mentioned in the Northeastern BU game, Northeastern had almost 50 shots. So you'd think that there'd be a few more goals in the net, but like you said, goaltending, and I know we talked about this last week as well. That's really one of the biggest things in a short tournament like this is you need really good goaltending in order to advance and in order to get into the positions late in the season in general that you want to get to, and we certainly saw that with a pair of 2-1 games. So it was a lot of fun, and certainly should be fun next Monday as well.
Agreed. Let's recap the games that ended up happening. In the first one, let's just let's own up to the fact that we were pretty wrong in our predictions of how the first game ended up going. We both predicted Harvard, and of course, Boston College played like they had a trophy on the line, like they had a tournament on the line, and played like Jerry York was their head coach, and not like a lesser coach who deserved to go out with not a great effort or a great game. They played up to their talent finally, but you wouldn't know it from the shot counter because they had 5 shots each in the first and second period. And it felt like Harvard outplayed them for very big stretches of those periods, if not for all of them. And then the third comes around, and they get 8 shots. Only one of them goes through, and Joseph Woll is incredible in the back stretch of that game. The way that we've known, I think we've always known, he's capable of being that kind of incredible goaltender.
Yeah, it certainly. And I would say to kind of look back at that game that Harvard, for the most part, they outshot them in all three three periods, BC only had 18 shots in total. So it was really a defensive effort, whole defensive effort on their part. And while it was terrific, 13 shots against him in the third period, and he stopped them all. BC. Actually, Harvard's only goal came late in the second period, and BC scored just about midway through the third. It was certainly a different kind of game. I expected kind of with Harvard's the way that they've been able to put the puck in the net, and I know Jerry York talked about this after the game, how active their defense is, especially someone like Adam Fox, who's had an unbelievable season putting up points. They're really able to do a good job of kind of shutting them down, and their power play had 4 opportunities, really didn't get very much done and all of them. Only 6 of their 28 shots came in the power plays. So certainly not what I expected in that one. As far as the like we were talking about last week, thought it would be Harvard would be in control of the game, but I kind of thought that they would have the upper hand in the score. But like you said, it's trophy season, so the Jerry York teams are always going to be at their best, and Joseph Wall certainly was, and BC's freshmen certainly were. We talk a lot about in these Beanpots how the local guys always seem to step up, but maybe some of these freshmen who aren't from here maybe don't know any better, and big stage they come up and get the job done. So certainly we've seen Joe Wall get the job done in past games and big games, and the freshmen came to play for the Eagles as well.
Yeah, Patrick Giles and Jack McBain, the 2 goal scorers for the Eagles. Giles, it was his first collegiate goal. I'm going to make us all feel really old. His birthday is January 3rd of 2000. I just said that. A player born in 2000 who is now 19 years old scored a Beanpot goal. Yes, we are getting older now. That was his 5th point of the season. He only the 1 goal. He's from Chevy Chase, Maryland, and that is a thing that's a really interesting point on the locals, because after last year's Beanpot, Adam Gaudette, who grew up right around here, he had said that he had wanted to go to a Beanpot school, and he was also asked in the presser. You'll remember this because you were here. You were there in the building as I was. He was asked about if he would have, because he almost made the Olympic team, he was one of the last guys who missed it, and he was asked, would you rather go and compete for the Olympics, or would you rather win a Beanpot? And he said, I'd rather win a Beanpot, which is kind of a remarkable observation, or a remarkable thing, because the Olympics is a lot bigger, you'd think, but to the local kids, I guess not. And Jack McBain is a kid from Toronto, and also January 6th of 2000. So, and he's got a bunch of goals before. That was his 6th of the season, and he was coming off a very, very good game against UConn. We'll talk about this maybe a little bit later on, but I imagine that that's got to have some kind of impact, your ability to roll momentum from your last game into the next one, particularly with some of these teams having rather important games upcoming. And that Harvard power play, I'll highlight this point before we move on. The power play for the Crimson entered at a 34-point-something%, which rounded up to 35% success rate on the power play. They went 0 for 4. They're still the national leaders in the power play percentage rate. They have a 32.4% success rate. Second place is still UMass Amherst. They had played 1 game against BU, and their power play wasn't affected that much. 30.5%. Harvard still leads by 2 percentage points, even after an 0 for 4 showing. So that Crimson unit will be fine moving forward, I think. It's in that them and Northeastern were in that kind of interesting position of you have pairwise positioning, and Harvard did drop. They now fall to 17th in the pairwise, and they'll be fighting for their tournament lives both this upcoming weekend against Union and then against BU. So they're in kind of a curious position now after the loss of being right on the fringes of being in the tournament.
Yeah, it's you can look back at the end of the season and kind of see these games that you lose by a goal or whether they're in the Beanpot or not. But definitely the games in February and March are just as important as the games in October and November. So it doesn't really matter when they come up. A game like this, you can look back and it can be important on the winning or the losing side. So it'll be interesting to see how, like you said, Harvard can respond with a league game in between the 2 Mondays of the Beanpot, and playing BU again in the consolation game is going to be very important, just as it is for the other three schools in their Beanpot games. Because when you play these games against Beanpot teams, I know this was talked about after the game and the week prior at the lunch and getting ready for the tournament. But these teams are always, or for the most part, 3 of the 4 anyways, usually are some of the best teams in the country, depending on the year. And a year like this, they're all in pretty good standing as far as I guess outside of Boston College with the overall record, but they're obviously in a very good position in Hockey East. But they're all in pretty good position as far as the races in their leagues and potential to do well in their league tournaments to get ready for the NCAA tournament. They may not be in the best, like you said, pairwise position where they're comfortably in the tournament, but it doesn't really matter if you're playing your best hockey at the right time of the year, and that's what all 4 of these teams are looking to do. Because if you can win 2 games like in the Beanpot, if you can kind of replicate that later on in a few weeks when it comes to Hockey East or the ECAC tournament, doesn't matter where you stand in the pairwise necessarily. So it'll be fun to watch on Monday to see how that kind of shakes out, because we're getting to that time where you can really reference that and it means something. You can reference it earlier in the season, but obviously things are much more able to change. But once you get into this point in the year, it's less so changing. So we'll see how that goes.
Let's sidle over to the other game, the late game, the one that went into overtime. And it's nice to remember how much Northeastern and Boston University truly despise each other. Because there were a lot of points when there weren't a lot of penalties called to this game. 2 in the first, 3 in the second, and 2 in the third. By the way, 2 of those 3, both interference penalties on Casper Kotkins-Salo. Oh, it wasn't quite as bad as in the first game. There was a very funny sequence in that second period where Henry Bowlby takes a hooking minor at 5:02. He gets out of the box, and then immediately at 7:15, he's seconds after being in the box, 13 seconds after getting out of the box, he takes another hooking minor, and then late on in that frame, he scores the only Harvard goal. That is funny. How do you not have a sense of humor looking at Harvard? I understand that Harvard fans might not be all that happy about trying to remember or take some positive spin out of this game, but guys, how do we not have a sense of humor about quirks like that? So the Northeastern BU game, those teams don't like each other. I don't know what it is. I don't know why exactly it is that 2 schools with competitive players with a lot of history between each other, with recent history, actually I don't know if I could say the coaches have anything of like a rivalry going back and forth with each other. I know that that Jim Madigan's, if you ever got Madigan to be fully bluntly honest, I think the school that he's had his biggest competitions with really throughout his career, it's been BU. Like for long-term history of the Northeastern program. And a bunch of their guys afterwards, like their photography guys afterwards, said to me that they mostly are like, we have to beat BU. beating Boston College is just another thing that they have to do on the schedule. It's not as big a deal as trying to beat Boston University for them.
Yeah, I can see that. Obviously, I would think, especially where there is such proximity to both BC and BU, it's obviously they're important games. And if you look at the hockey standings this year, with the way that the season is going to finish up, obviously they're going to play Boston College in the championship game on Monday night. Northeastern will, but they're playing each other in the last two games, or two of the last games of the regular season. So. And they're obviously neck and neck in the hockey standings. So I'm going to think that I guess this year, in the past 2 years ago, there was a several year run where it was Northeastern and BU in those last two games of the season. And I think maybe that might have something to do with it, where they're always kind of playing each other at the end of the season. This was back at the point where, or at least most of the way through that time, Hockey East teams were all playing each other 3 times, but I think there were a couple of years in there. I don't remember the exact timeline when this schedule kind of started and stopped. But there was a long while where they were playing BU twice at the end of the year. So definitely, I would think that has something to do with that point. But I think this year those games against BC are going to mean an awful lot to decide whether it's could potentially be first place, because BC has games with UMass as well, so we'll see where that goes. But I think it'll be fun either way, and certainly these Beanpot rivalries have gone on for a long time. So I think you're right about the BU Northeastern thing, especially in more recent years. But certainly the Northeastern BC matchup will be interesting going forward, since they're going to be playing each other quite a bit over the next few weeks.
Yeah, this is going to be kind of an interesting setup for them. The Huskies get BC on Monday night. They will then, on the 1st and 2nd of March, which is less than a month away, which consider how quickly this college season has gone. On the 1st and 2nd of March, there will be a home-and-home. Friday will be at Connie Forum, and Saturday will be at Matthews. And then Northeastern ends their season the next week on a Friday night home game. Will be their senior night against the New Hampshire Wildcats, who, as a sidebar, this is mainly to be talking about the Beanpot teams. But sidebar, don't take New Hampshire lightly. They're a little bit further down in the standings, but don't take the Wildcats lightly in any possible way. They're only hovering at one game over 500, but that's a team you don't want to face come playoff time, because they can handle overtime games. They can handle playoff competition. They are going to be better conditioned just off the kind of games they've been playing. So yeah, Northeastern, they currently sit in 4th place in Hockey East. They're at 16-8-1 overall. Only 1 point behind the suddenly surging UMass Lowell Riverhawks, who just, of course, and behind they're 2 points behind BC. UMass has started to pull away with 3 points, and we'll talk about them a little bit with considerations from the BU side of things, because that's kind of a deflating loss for the Boston University Terriers, who have not had a very good start to the month of February. They had a pretty good January. It was nothing incredible. It was nothing outstanding. You had some really nice showings against New Hampshire and Providence, tied at Harvard, blew out Merrimack, and that's a recovery after a really heartbreaking Quinnipiac game, and then split with Arizona State, which is an acceptable outcome. And then February begins, and the defense can do nothing against UMass Amherst. Your offense keeps you in it, but you just don't have enough in front of Ottinger to help keep anything out. And then you can't rely on – you over-rely on Jake Ottinger in the Beanpot game. He makes 47 of 49 saves and was the best player on the ice. And if he only allows one goal or has a shutout against Harvard in the consolation game, Ottinger should win the Eberle Award as the best goaltender, unless there's some kind of crazy overtime game that happens between Northeastern and BC when either Woll or Primo just goes off and has the game of their lives. Unless that happens, Ottinger's your Eberle Award winner, I think, right?
Yeah, and I actually think that, I'm not sure off the top of my head, and I don't have there was no Beanpot actually programmed this year, so I don't have the records in front of me, but I believe that award is by statistics. So I don't think there's any. He's off certainly as a great head start over everyone else because I think it's by save percentage. But I'm not 100%
yeah,
sure.
So this is from the Beanpot Wikipedia page. 2 awards are presented annually: the Most Valuable Player and the Eberle Award. The Eberle Award, first presented in 1974, is given annually to the goalie with the best save percentage. The winning goalie must participate in 2 games to qualify, considering that BU and Harvard will face off, and Harvard's a really good team. They're not going to... Last year, when Harvard and BC played in the consolation game, they gave the other the backup treatment, with Edquist getting the start for BC and Cam Gornett getting the Harvard tilt. So I would expect them to roll with their guy. It'd be the first time that a player would have not participated in the Beanpot title game and would have won it since Steve Michalek did it in 2015 when he made 63 saves in a double overtime game in the first round of the tournament against BU, and just didn't have a whole lot behind him. Ottinger has won the Eberle Award once. He did it in 2017 when Nathan Krusko and the Harvard Crimson ended up winning that tournament. So it's a possibility, but it falls under the category of we'll have to wait and see. But just looking at it from the BU perspective, they had their share of opportunities, and also Joel Farabee is a monster. I just wonder if he stays around for more than one season. He's a first-round pick of the Philadelphia Flyers, and if we're to be generous, the Flyers need some help. Not necessarily on the forward line, but they certainly wouldn't turn down young goal scoring as they're trying to rebuild their organization. So how much pressure do you think they put on Joel Farabee to bring him up? He had 1 goal in this game. It was his 10th of the year, and he had 2 breakaways, which were stopped by Primo, which, they were very good plays by Primo to make those saves, and not a whole lot that you can be mad about if you're Farabee. You gave it your best shot, and goaltender made a save on you. So how much pressure do they put on him to try and bring him up to the pros, you think? Because he's been really, really good the back half, especially since the World Juniors.
Yeah, I that's exactly what I was going to say. I know that we've talked a lot about that with a lot of hockey's players over the last couple weeks. I know looking at Oliver Wahlstrom from BC has played his best hockey since coming back from that, and certainly you can definitely say that with Farabee. He's been on fire. A couple 3 points in that game that we referenced against UMass, and several other multi-point games since then. But yeah, he's certainly looking like someone who could make that jump if he chooses to. Obviously, it's depends on the player, and I think we're talking about that with Cal McCarr from UMass over the course of last year, and obviously he decided to come back and play his sophomore year, and that certainly turned out pretty well so far. But yeah, I think could certainly see him coming back. But obviously, with a lot of these talented players offensively, there are certainly things to work out against kind of coming up to this competition and playing at both ends of the ice, which certainly I'm sure is something that he would maybe talk about wanting to improve before you make that jump. Obviously, still a young kid and someone who came from U.S. development programs, so those guys are certainly gifted offensively. But when they come up to the college level, there's sometimes an adjustment that comes with that as far as the two-way game that they play on the ice. So I would think that that's something that he and definitely some of these other players would be talking about as well, as far as the things to work on in their game to work to that point. But Farabee is the way he's come on lately is certainly impressive, and could definitely see that happening, if not this year, certainly next year if he comes back and has another good season at BU. So definitely something to watch.
Yeah, my thought on that was I thought Brady Tkachuk would be back for a second year, and he ended up departing. So I just thought he would, so I wonder. Obviously, Farabee and Tkachuk are not the same players. Tkachuk obviously plays with he plays like a Tkachuk. He has a real physical edge to him that if you have that name, you kind of have to, not just on the whole family tradition, but on the just sound of your name, Tkachuk. You have to play with that kind of physical edge if you play hockey. Either that or you're an offensive lineman winning Super Bowls for the Patriots or something like that. But and then the other player really to talk about from the second game, Tyler Madden. What a player this kid is. He's not that big. He's 5'11" and weighs $150 on his official height and weight. So he's not a big kid at all. He's a third-round pick by Vancouver from Deerfield Beach, Florida, is his listed hometown. He is the son of John Madden, or related to Stanley Cup winner John Madden. Is that right?
Yep, that is.
Yeah, I thought so. And what a player this kid has been. It was quiet against Providence and against Lowell, but he had the breakaway goal on an assist by Jeremy Davies, which, Jeremy Davies had another point for Northeastern. Tell me something that's actually shocking. And if Cale Makar weren't, in my opinion, so far and away the favorite to win the Hobey Baker Award, Davies would be, at the very least, would have a real shot to win it, in my estimation at least, because he didn't jump off the page for a lot of that game, but he made the stretch pass in overtime to a streaking Makar on, I'll be kind of honest, a bad line change by BU that Northeastern just caught him napping on, and that ended up winning the game.
Yeah, obviously a turnover on that play, kind of the Northeastern defenseman kind of took their man out of the play, and the puck came free right to Davies, and he makes that, like you said, unbelievable pass from pretty close to his own net in the circle to the side of Caden Primo, and all the way up the ice. And Madden, obviously such a gifted player, fast player. I know a lot of people. I don't know if this has anything to do with the fact that he's wearing the same number or anything, but certainly in terms of height and the way that he buzzes around the zone and makes comparisons to Dylan Sakura, who obviously played a great role in Northeastern last year and over the course of his career really developed. But I don't think Dylan Sakura wasn't even close to the player as a freshman that Madden is now. He obviously Sakura wasn't even a regular player in the lineup his freshman year and really had to work into that role. But Madden is someone who's come in right away and played a huge role in Northeastern success. Entered the Beanpot 20 points already, and certainly again for the second time in a couple weeks scored a big goal in overtime. He was as I'm sure everyone in the college hockey world saw based on his celebrations after the two goals scored against UMass night after getting blown out. Northeastern in an overtime winner against then I believe they were the number one team in the country that series, UMass. And then again in the Beanpot, I know he talked after the game in his post-game press conference about how much he likes these big stages and performing on the big stage. So not surprised to see him come through. Certainly a confident kid, and I'm not surprised to see him come through in obviously a big spot there. And we talk about Jake Ottinger too. He was, I thought, he was pretty square on that shot too, and he did get a huge piece of that puck too. So certainly a great player makes a great play, but you can't fault obviously can't fault Ottinger on that play at all because like I said, I thought he was pretty close to making that save, but just squeezed through.
Agreed, absolutely. Puck University will continue after a brief word.
Life is about making decisions. At BMW I, we decided it was time to reinvent the car from the ground up, making sure we were open for truly innovative ideas. We decided that the car we wanted must be electric. And it should be made of extremely light and super strong carbon fiber. And finally, we decided to make it more intelligent and added our promise of incomparable driving pleasure. We made all these decisions to offer you a choice. The all-electric BMW i3.
So now we transition from, we've done the first round of the Beanpot, we've done the opening day of it. Now we get, it's one of the more curious timings. We have league games for everybody on either Thursday or Friday. Thursday, Northeastern makes a trip down to Hartford, a game which I'll be going to, and so I'll be seeing the Yukon Huskies host the Northeastern Huskies. I feel like we're lacking mascot originality. That's the only college hockey game in the whole country that's being played on that day. Then Friday, the Beanpot teams are going to the following places. BU goes to UMass Amherst to face the Minutemen in a rematch of what was a superb game on Friday night. I will not be going to that one. My Inside Hockey friend and colleague, Jason Scales, will be going to that one. And BC is paying a visit to UMass Lowell, because what's a good way to temper your momentum after breaking your non-conference winning streak? Go and play UMass Lowell, because of course that's how that works. Which, by the way, the streak is over. Boston College has finally, for the first time since the 2016-17 year, and the early part of that year, Boston College has won a non-conference game. Their last non-conference game against a team who was not, I should make this emphasis, Arizona State is the last non-conference team that they played. And you might be thinking, well, that's recent. Arizona State's good. No. 2016 was their first full season, I think, as a Division I program. So that's not a good thing. It was their first time beating a non-conference team of huge weight since beating Denver, who actually ended up going on and winning the national championship that season. So that's a thing you look at with enormous weight and enormous merit. So it's their first time in like 24, 25 games, something crazy like that, of winning a non-conference game. So congratulations, Boston College. It's King Flippin' Kong that's off their backs now, and they get a chance to go and compete. But first, you got to go to Lowell, so have fun with that one, good people. And then Harvard gets Union at home. They're the only team that's at home, and I think I look at these three games, the non-Beanpot games, and I think that BU-UMass game is one that matches up pretty well, except for the fact that UMass already won the road matchup for them at Aganis, and now we'll get a sold-out rocking building on that Friday night. So I can only expect that some craziness will end up happening at Mullins Center, and I actually think that the most interesting game of all these is the BC Lowell game, personally.
Yeah, like you said, Lowell. Certainly a team that's played its best hockey and always does seem to play some of its best games. Coming at this point in the year, they are an extremely young team this year. I believe the youngest team in the country in terms of the number of freshmen that they had at the beginning of the season. But once you get to this point in the season, you're 20, 25, coming close to 30 games into the season. That's when you want to play your best hockey, and there aren't any freshmen anymore. I know. A lot of coaches kind of use that line to kind of describe teams at the end of the season, and they certainly have a lot of guys who've graduated from that freshman status on that Lowell team because they've played so many minutes over the course of the season so far, and it always seems like those Norm Bazin coached teams are playing their best. They're obviously never an easy out, I should say, at the beginning of the season, but especially. Coming down the stretch, these February and March games against UMass Lowell are ones that are certainly hard to take. So, like you said, I agree with that and that being a really tough one for BC, especially having to go on the road to the Songus Arena, where obviously there's always a home ice advantage for Lowell. So that'll be a fun one for sure.
Yeah. I'm not going to get to see the any of those Friday games. I'm actually going to Hamden because there is a non-Beanpot involved matchup between Yale and Quinnipiac, which I'm told is one of those rivalry games that you have to see at least once. So I'm going to see that at least once. Saturday, I'll be catching the UMass Amherst game at Lowell against the Riverhawks. So I will get to see these buildings, but the only game involving Beanpot people that I am seeing is the Thursday night game at the XL Center between the dueling Huskies, which, I mean, Northeastern is a better team than UConn this season, and I should say up front that I really, really wish UConn were in a better spot as a program right now, just because God, Mike Cavanaugh deserves a lot better than this. There's some real talent moving forward on that team. I don't think UConn will end up making the Hockey East playoffs. They've not been officially eliminated yet, but I don't think they end up making it this season. But the arena situation for them is not exactly brilliant. They're floating back and forth. They go to Hartford. It's not a great position to be in, and it's a shame because, man, Cavanaugh's a great coach. And I just feel like he's being left out a little bit on an island where he is right now.
Yeah, like you said, there's certainly definitely a team that has a lot of talent, and again, a lot of that talent is young talent. So I guess you can't really be too surprised that I guess I thought they were going to have a better year just because they had some talent returning as well. But certainly you can't really fault a team. I know. I just said that there aren't really freshmen at this point in the season, but they were playing a lot of close. They were playing quite a hard schedule at the beginning of the season as well. That's important to kind of point out in it as well. But certainly they were playing a lot of games and a lot of games on the road at the beginning of the season too, which doesn't help when you are a young team. So and like you said with UNH, I'd expect, since they're obviously in a playoff hunt at this point, they'll be hungry for all of these games. I know there was a game, I can't remember if it was January or February last year, where Northeastern went down to Hartford and took a pretty big beating. So you have to be ready for each one. And this UConn team only won 7 games this year, but they've played a lot of them tight. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in that one. If you're kind of riding that Beanpot high, especially after a game that goes to overtime, like Northeastern did on Monday night, you can't have that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in that one tomorrow night.
Yeah, last season when Northeastern won their first Beanpot in 30 years, round 1 of the Beanpot, they beat Boston College 3-0. They then, for their league game, their in between Beanpot games, they returned home to Matthews Arena to face the at the time 13-16-2 UConn Huskies, which that's respectable, and UConn ended up winning behind Tanner Creel, like 5'9" Tanner Creel in goal, having a magnificent game and winning that one with 32 saves as UConn won 4-2. So, and that was UConn's first win at Matthews Arena ever. It had actually been a place where Cavanaugh's first year at UConn, they went up to Northeastern and got crushed 9-1. So that was kind of a boogeyman house for him. So, yeah, it is a game that you can't take lightly. It's a game that they played last year and lost. It's different circumstances. It's at the XL Center, and I hope that people show up for that in respectable levels. I can't expect anything, honestly, because Hartford is a really odd place to try and pin and try to figure out. But I at least hope that they fill up that place pretty well and pretty respectably. So there's all of that. So we get through the weekend games, and then we get to the second Monday in February. We get back to Boston Garden. I know it's actually TD Garden, but I don't care. To me, it's always Boston Garden. So we get back to Boston Garden, and then we get Harvard and BU in the consolation game, which on quality of hockey, that should be pretty good. These teams played in January to start off the month for both of them, to start the second half for BU, and it was the second game back for Harvard. And it was a really, really fun hockey game, all things considered, between those two teams. And I still remember distinctly asking Coach Donato Teddy about how nervous he might be facing BU again, and he had the line of, "We'd like to face them again. I just hope it's in the late game of the Beanpot." Well, sorry, Teddy, you only get one of those two things.
Yeah, I think it should certainly be a fun one on the first game on Monday afternoon. They've already played each other this year, which, like you said, another always seem to do, and it always seems to be a pretty competitive game. So I think it'll be a fun one on the first game on Monday, and will certainly be an important one, like you said, for two teams that kind of need to win their conferences to get into the NCAA tournament. But this Beanpot consolation game, even though it might not be played in front of the big crowd that the night game will, always seems to be an important game. You have to get yourselves ready for that, which is important this point in the year, because that's a situation that you could find yourself in come your own league tournament, but more so in the NCAA tournament, where you're not necessarily playing in front of a full building, especially if you're not in your home. So it'll be a fun one. Guys might have to get themselves motivated a little bit, but two teams with a lot of I know we talked about off the top local guys certainly shouldn't need to get fired up to play in the Beanpot, because it's what these guys wait some of them their whole lives for.
Yeah. This the evening game between Northeastern and Boston College will be the main event. But do your best to try and get into, if you're going to Monday, which, by the way, go. It's one of college hockey's best spectacles. It is one of the best parts of the season every single season. So, yeah, make sure you set aside the opportunity to go and enjoy it. It really is one of those things you don't want to miss. So, the consolation game will be fun, but the main event scheduled for 7:30. We hope we drop puck at least somewhat close to that, but scheduled for 7:30, Boston College and Northeastern. BC has ended their non-conference losing streak against the only non-Hockey East team in the tournament. Now they get to go and win, or try to win at least, their first Beanpot since 2016, and that took an overtime against BU. It ended up being a 1-0 overtime victory in which Sean McGuire was the best player on the ice, but BC ended up getting the win. And Northeastern will try and win consecutive Beanpots for the first time since the 1984 and 1985 Beanpots, which that would be a not small deal for Northeastern, who went 30 years without winning a Beanpot, and now has an opportunity to go 2 years in a row winning this tournament.
Yeah, I know Jim Madigan obviously was involved in both of those as a player on both of those, and as assistant coach on the title that followed before last year in 1988, and certainly this, especially for him, certainly gets these guys revved up and ready to go for this, and again going for it, like you said, back-to-back years, certainly again shouldn't need to be fired up for that. So and like you said, they played a really good game last Monday night. We're just able to kind of squeeze past BU, even though they almost doubled the shot count, 49 shots in total, and we'll certainly would expect to see another highly competitive game. It's funny because I would probably say that even more so than against BU, the most talented, complete team, maybe even more so than BC this year would be BU. But it's the beauty of the Beanpot, four good teams, and you get Boston College, and it's funny as well because they haven't played each other in Hockey East yet, like we were talking about earlier. Won't do so until the second to last weekend of the season. So usually these two teams are seeing each other at this point already, but that'll make for an interesting wrinkle this year as well, where they haven't played yet.
Yeah, that's kind of a curious way that this whole thing ends up working out. I hadn't realized actually before we started recording this that Northeastern and BC for this season have no history between each other. They played their series last year, and it was a split with each team winning the road game. The game at Conti was a 5-0 destruction. And Northeastern was up 5-0 in the middle of the second, and then kind of took their foot off the gas. I think it might have ended up being 5-1, 5-2. BC got a goal or two back, but and then the one at Matthews was BC won because bounces were dumb. I'll just put it that way, is that the bounces were kind of really stupid, and that ended up allowing BC to come out of Matthews with a very hard-earned victory. But yeah, this is the for Northeastern. How many times have they actually been to the Beanpot final? They have been in this 18 times before this year, so this will be time number 19 being in the Beanpot tournament. They've won it 5 times, and we may well get repeat winners. It would be the first time in a while that we've gotten repeat winners, because we had each one of the teams win it in 4 different years. Boston College had a stretch of winning it, I think, every single year from 2010 until 2014, which also might have just coincided with one of the best stretches that any team has ever had atop the college hockey world. Not just the Beanpot world, but that stretch from 2010 really to 2016, when BC won every Beanpot except one, when they got upset by Northeastern in round 1 and they didn't get a chance to face the Jack Eichel squad in the Beanpot final. That allowed for Northeastern to have a crack at the Terriers, and they ended up going down in that one. And BC just happened to also reach the Frozen Four in 10, 12, 14, and 16. So 4 times in that stretch they reached the Frozen Four, and 2 of those in 10 and 12 they won the national championship. So how much of that kind of nostalgic glow do you think maybe BC fans might still be living off of? Because I think the freshmen, or excuse me, the seniors on this current BC crop, weren't they freshmen on that?
Yes.
On that team, yeah. So
the last one.
Yeah, so this is we're living off of the embers of, for BC, one of the greatest stretches that any program has ever had in college hockey history. So I just wonder how much of an impact the history of that program has for those seniors able to revive it and, restore BC to what they feel is their rightful place.
Yeah, I do think that has something, especially in this case where the seniors were freshmen on that last team. The 2016 team was the BC team in that 4-year stretch that won it. I think obviously one of the captains is Casey Fitzgerald, and he's one of those local guys, and was able to kind of talk to him about this too, and for some of the Beanpot lead-up stuff that we were working on. And it's definitely important to these guys. Obviously, Casey's brother Ryan was in the Beanpot as well, and now playing in the Bruins organization. And you really want to. All these local guys want to win the Beanpot, and especially one with obviously the history in that way. And obviously, he was able to do it as a freshman. But a lot of these guys, you don't want to go out in your career. You want to go out in your career on top, and you don't want the kind of the best experience to be at the beginning like it was for them. And obviously they had were in a great run at that point in that point in time, but they kind of want to use this Beanpot as kind of motivation for the rest of the year, because like we're talking about, even though that non-conference record looks ugly and has for the last couple of years. They're right again. Almost seems like a broken record that we're talking about this, but they're right again in a really admirable position in hockey, second place, with the series next weekend after this one, right after the Beanpot to play the team that is right above them in the standings. So if they can pull out a win on Monday night against a really good Northeastern team, again, that they haven't seen yet, that might come into play as far as the scouting and the kind of making that projection could be interesting. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that works out. It's a unique wrinkle in the fact that they haven't played yet, but I think that history in this case doesn't always work out that way, because transition is turnover, I should say, is so great, and obviously all of these college sports with the classes turning over, but it'll be fun, and I think that with the way that is, and with who the leaders are on this team, it will be an important point, because that Beanpot obviously had a great team, BC did, and it'll be fun to see how they can follow that up and try to restart this kind of cycle all over again.
I agree. I as a BU person, I very begrudgingly agree with that one. And also, since I look at it's also like, as a BU fan, it is sad for me to know that when the BU's team regathers after the season is all done and when we get back, it'll be the second year in a row that none of the players at Boston University will have won a Beanpot. Like, none of the players on the team this year have won a Beanpot. They won't get that chance. And when they regather in the late summer and the early fall to start the new season, the 1920 season, none of those guys will have won a Beanpot. And it's weird for a BU person who I only saw one Beanpot in my one Beanpot win in my time as a BU student, which I can't say anything about that because Northeastern only got their first in 30 years last season, and Harvard had my dad, who I think if it's just BU against anyone, he'll pull for them, but he did his undergrad years at Harvard, and you're always much closer affiliated with your undergraduate school than wherever you go to grad school, if you did in fact go to grad school. So he is a Harvard guy, and he watched as his school went from 1993 all the way until 2017 before they finally won another Beanpot. So for me to even have one as a fan in my tenure, you didn't go to any of these schools, so you're I kind of like having you on because you are a completely impartial outside observer in a way. Though I think your dad did follow Northeastern, at least as a fan, if I have that right?
Yes, he went there.
Your dad went to Northeastern.
Yep.
Of course, we have another Northeastern person to fill the void of a Northeastern host. So, meanwhile, you keep getting the at least honest partisan hackery of me. Though I don't think I've been overly pro BU on this one. I've been pointing out where they made mistakes, but well, whatever. So, okay, so let's do prediction time as we are starting to wind our way down. Let's do prediction time. So, for the consolation game, which actually does have pretty not insignificant pairwise considerations, Joshua Kummins, who do you think wins between the Boston University Terriers and Harvard Crimson?
Wow, it's a tough one because they played early in the season at Harvard, and kind of the first game coming out of that semester, and it was just at the point where those World Junior guys had come back, so it was a 2-2 tie for those two teams, which I guess certainly plays into it being tough. But I think for honestly the same reasons that we were talking about last week, with just how dangerous the power play is, and how they've really played maybe a little bit more consistently through the season as kind of their record and where they are in the ECAC kind of goes, I think take Harvard in this one. I think it's going to be another close game, as both of the games last week were. But yeah, I think certainly will be a tough one, but I like Harvard in a close one.
I really don't want to agree with you on that one, just because I don't want to see BU finish in fourth place, because that would be kind of embarrassing. But I think this one is a flip a coin, because I could see both of them. They've played once already. It was a 2-2 tie. I could see either team ending up with a victory. I just think that BU program is one that has a lot of pride. And Albie O'Connell, the head coach, who won 4 Beanpots as a player, I'm sure that he's looking at this thinking, we are not finishing in last place in my first year as a Beanpot coach. So off of pride alone, which is really the biggest part of the Beanpot, I think.
True.
I'll take BU just because I think they have a bunch of untapped talent, and I like Jake Ottinger, and I like Albie to figure out a game plan for this. So I'll go with them. And now for the main events, for the Beanpot Championship game between Boston College, the Eagles, and the Northeastern University Huskies. Josh Kummins, who do you think will win that game?
Yeah, I would think that it's going to be a fun game, and I think it's funny because you can really never look at the records as far as kind of these go, but just this year, we say that every year, but it's been an interesting year just with the way that kind of the seasons have gone, and teams have been playing better as of late, and it was really obviously impressive to see BC pull the game out on Monday in the way that they did, where it was such a close, low scoring game, and they've had some trouble scoring goals this year. So it was kind of, I know Jerry York certainly satisfied with the way that they won in that one, a 2-1 game in a year where they have had trouble scoring. And, but I think that just with the way that things have gone and with kind of how they match up, I think Huntington Avenue might be a happy place next Monday night. I just think that Northeastern, although they were kind of stonewalled by a really good goaltender, and they will have to play another one. I just think that if there's a team that's capable of putting up more than 2 goals, and although that's all they were able to kind of muster in that one, I think BU may be more complete wise is a better team than BC is right now, but I just think that the way that they match up against each other, I think it's going to be close again. And I would say in this one, it might, I would think the winner will have more than 2 goals. And I think Northeastern will win its second straight Beanpot after, like we were just talking about, not doing it once in 30 years. So I think the Garden's going to be rocking in that Northeastern section again. And I could see them being pretty happy at the end of Monday night.
I'll go ahead and agree with that. I think that Northeastern is top to bottom the most talented team in this tournament. Right. I think that they are. I think you'll see them in the Hockey East semis again at the TD Garden, so they'll make themselves very comfortable on this Garden ice. This is a program at Northeastern that over the last couple years, and I think it really started with the 2015 Beanpot loss when Madigan had built up the expectation of we can go toe-to-toe with the best people in this sport. And even though they lost that Beanpot to BU, to Grizzy and to Eichel and all of them, they still hung in there and went toe-to-toe with them. The next season, they put on one of the most spirited runs that you'll ever see in, I'd argue, any collegiate sport. Their run from being like 2-2 and forever to going to winning like 20-something games out of 23-something games and ending up winning the Hockey East tournament and beating BC and beating Lowell along the way, the two, at the point, perennial powerhouses. and then had a very good season in 17 but couldn't have anything to show for it, and then had a great season last year in which you won a Beanpot. This is not a doormat program. This is a first-class premier program that's getting in these big names. Tyler Madden is not a small name in the slightest bit. Adam Gaudette was a regular piece who turned himself into a enormous household name in the college hockey world. Jeremy Davies is a Hobie Baker candidate, and I look at this program and I think it's now on a par with, if we were having this discussion 5 or 6 years ago, I would say that BC outclasses them in every single way. And, historically, yes, BC has a lot better history still, but Northeastern is right on a par with the Boston College Eagles. And for this team this year, BC has struggled to score goals. They're a bottom 10 team in the nation in offense. Northeastern is actually surprisingly about middle of the pack there. They're about, I'm looking for where they are on the output here. Sorry for stalling for a little bit. I'll make sure to edit this out. They're tied for 24th with Michigan, and they've lived on Caden Primo being a great goaltender, and I could see him doing that again. I'll take Northeastern to end up winning the Beanpot for the second year in a row. I'll agree with you on the predictions, but with the proviso of, man, BC can really win it this year as well.
Yeah, it's been, like we were talking about last week, we kind of both agreed on Harvard, and it was certainly a game that they could have won, and it was a closer, low scoring, like we were talking about, but yeah, it's certainly with the way that they played. I was impressed that because they haven't, if you kind of look back at their schedule, all of their wins, they scored more than 2 goals. Yeah, actually, all of their wins, they scored more than 2 goals after really struggling to score over the course of the year. I think they won a couple. There were some 3-2, 4-2 games in there. All of their wins have been close, but not at the level of 2-1. So certainly, I think that has to make Jerry York pretty happy. But like you said, it's kind of a different time in college hockey right now, and kind of as evidence, big evidence is that non-conference losing streak that they just got rid of. But yeah, and it's certainly one of the ways that you're kind of seeing those changing times is the way that Jim Madigan has had the program going for the last handful of years, and even before they won that Beanpot last year, that overtime game with BU and the Beanpot you referenced, they had been to the Beanpot, I believe it's 3 years in a row leading up to that 2015 at the beginning of his time. So it was a building process, and obviously now they're a team that's in the NCAA tournament conversation, went there last year and could very well go back this year if they finish up strong. So it'll be a fun game on Monday night, I'm sure, and fun rest of the season.
Mm-hmm. You can follow Joshua Kummins on Twitter at Joshua Kummins. It's his name, Joshua Kummins, Kummins. You can follow him for all of his stuff with the New England Hockey Journal and with the New England Baseball Journal as well. When that season gets up and underway, he does stuff with the Navs of the summer leagues up here. And you can follow him on Instagram at the same place as well for his name. Josh, you're going to be, of course, at the Beanpot, and what other games are you going to be at? I know you do a bunch of the Bruins games, and are you going to be at any of the college games over the weekend?
Yeah, I believe so. I haven't quite exactly picked out everything yet, but the Bruins are home this weekend too, so I might try to hit one of those, and I will probably, one for sure, see you in Lowell on Saturday night as well. I know they're playing twice at home this weekend, so that'll be kind of one of the local places to check out college hockey around here before the Beanpot this weekend, and that should be a fun game against UMass, their UMass sister school's school from Amherst.
You can follow him on those sites. You can follow me on Twitter at cclynchwall. You can follow me on Instagram at cclynch16. Thank you very much for your interest in college hockey and for your interest in our podcast and our show that we have here. You can follow Puck University on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, and Blog Talk Radio. Thank you so much for your listening. Thank you so much for your interest in what we're doing here. We hope to see you at the Beanpot tournament, at the other places where college hockey is being played throughout New England, throughout the whole country. We hope you enjoy yourselves, keep yourselves warm, and in the words of the great Tim Williams, keep your head up and your hits clean.